It is May 25th, and I have started my May TBR Spin book. So, the TBR Spin is a super fun book to game that was created by Sarah at Freshly Read Books. The premise is very simple. At the beginning of the year, we pick 12 books from our TBR. It could be our own TBR, it could be our audio TBR, it could be our Kindle TBR, whatever it is, and we use those 12 books as the base to start our TBR Spin. Every month, a little bit before the beginning of the month, Sarah spins a wheel with prompts on it, and those prompts lead us to pick a book off of our stack. In January, we had 12 books. Sarah spun the wheel, and we got a prompt that led us to a book. We read that book, and now we have 11 books. In February, Sarah spun the wheel. There was a prompt, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. I vlog all my TBR Spin books, so you probably already know this anyway because you've seen other ones of my vlogs. If you haven't seen my other vlogs and my other TBR Spin picks, I've done this for like 3 years, so there's plenty of videos. I will leave the playlist listed down below. This year's a little bit different because Sarah is doing live shows a little bit more for the end of the month, like the last week of the month, to pick your new book. That way you can do reading sprints, you can finish your previous book. During those reading sprints, you can pick your next book, you can start your new book and get a head start on it if you've already finished your other book, and it's a fun way for the TBR Spin community to come together. A note about prompts: the prompts do come off the wheel. So for instance, the last prompt that we got for May was a prompt that she had put on more recently. So there's never repeat prompts. There are prompts that sometimes make you switch out a book, which can be fun. Sometimes you have to switch out a book no matter what because you cannot make the prompt fit a book that you have in your stack, but like you can kind of always make it fit. And that was the case for me with the May pick. I've been behind all year, but in May I kind of caught up, and it is now, like I said, May 25th, and Sarah's actually doing her reading sprints today to pick the book for June. So what I usually do in these videos is I will read the book, I'll share some vlog clips of different things that I'm doing while I'm reading the book, and then I will watch her video way after it's been posted usually to pick the next book at the end of the video, at the end of the vlog. But I have a rare opportunity today. I have been reading The Sentence, and I've been reading this one on audio, and I am like 3/4 of the way through. So there is the potential that I could finish this book, watch the reading sprints, see the spin in real time, and pick another book if I can finish this book today. It is 9:48 here on Sunday of Memorial Day weekend in America, and my husband's at the office, so I think I could do this. Her sprints start 10:30 Central Time, I think she is, so she's like 2 hours. She's either 2 or 3 hours behind me. I'm not sure if she's Central or Eastern. Wait, no, Western, whatever the West time is. So that means I have quite a few hours. I also mentioned that the new prompt made me pick a book that didn't really fit the prompt super well, but I just shoehorned it in, and that prompt was to read a book with the weirdest like premise. So I picked The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. This is a book about Tuki, who is a middle-aged woman who's recently got out of prison. We see in the very first chapter why she was in prison, and then we see her life after she got out of prison. But the premise is that she works at a bookstore after she gets out of prison, and there is a ghost of her most annoying customer haunting her. So is that a super weird premise? I mean, it's not super weird. I definitely have weirder premises, but it was the weirdest premise on my stack at the moment. So I decided to pick this one, and I'm so glad I did. I've really been enjoying it. It is not as weird of a book as it sounds like from the weird premise. We follow Tuki, we learn about her crime, we learn a teeny tiny bit about her time in prison, but mostly we learn how she kind of finds a found family at Louise's bookstore after she gets out of prison, and we see quite a few years of her life there and people who were in her life before prison coming back in, and then we meet all the different people at the bookstore, including Louise Erdrich. So this is I don't think autofiction necessarily, but obviously there are elements of real life in this story. One of the elements of the real life is that it takes place right at the onset of COVID. So that doesn't actually start until a little bit past the middle of the book. COVID times doesn't start till then. I know from the jacket that we are going to also see other events that happened right at that time, but that hasn't happened yet either. So I will talk about that when I get to that point. But right now we're in COVID, and one of the reasons that I put off reading this book was because it's the first real COVID book that I've read. I guess I have read some other books without realizing it that mentioned COVID or referenced it as a time in their life. Sea of Tranquility might have referenced it, but whatever. The point is, this is more of a step-by-step of what people were actually thinking. And because Tuki works in retail and because she works at a bookstore, there's a lot of thoughts when we get to that point of how is the virus transmitted? How are we, how can we protect ourselves, and kind of reliving of that unknown and that uncertainty, specifically in retail and specifically in the service industry, was very real to me. It felt very real. Obviously, Louise went through this exact thing. I mean, that, if you want to call that kind of section autofiction, but it also just was my lived experience of we can work, and then all of a sudden we can't work, and then finally we have to get back to work because we have a PPE loan. Should we wear gloves? Should we isolate? Making sure that the people that you're working with are doing the right thing, being nervous around everyone, brought up a lot of memories and a lot of feelings and a lot of stress. So in a pretty stress-free book up until then, I mean, definitely in the beginning where you learn about Tuki going to prison is very stressful, but other than that, thinking about retail wasn't super stressful. The relationships that Tuki have, even though some of them are strained, wasn't that stressful, but then that part was really stressful. It's going to be interesting to see what this last bit of the book is like and what's happening, because mostly, like I said, we are learning about Tuki's life and we're going through basically her day-to-day. We're learning about all the different people at the bookstore, we're learning about her daughter-in-law, we're learning about her husband, we're learning about relationships she has with people from her past and from her present, and we are seeing people from the bookstore. And all along, as you might have noticed, I didn't mention, but Tuki is being haunted by someone in the bookstore, and she thinks that the reason that she's being haunted not only is because this was her most annoying customer, but also because they were friends, and then another added layer is the nature of Tuki's initial crime that sent her to prison. So I wonder if this book is going to have a resolution. I wonder if Tuki is going to accept or exorcise her ghost. I wonder if she's going to get the message that this ghost might be sending her, or if this haunting is going to go on and on. But Tuki's a really interesting character, and this is a surprisingly quiet novel for sounding like a very bizarre premise. I am really enjoying it. I've only read one other Louise Erdrich, and that was also about a pandemic and a plague, which is interesting because it wasn't about COVID-19, it was about a fictional plague. That one was a lot more action-packed, a lot more thrilling. This one is really a slice of life story. It just has Native American heritage and Native American spirituality in it, and this haunting that is linked to probably all of those things. So yeah, I'm super excited to finish it. I definitely want to read more Louise Erdrich. I knew before I started reading her books that I was really going to enjoy her, and I had started collecting her books a long time before actually reading one, but since reading Future Home of the Living God, I knew I really liked her writing and I knew I would want to come back to it. But I'm glad that I was correct, because I have continued to collect her books. I have quite a few of her other books. I very recently got The Night Watchman. I'm reading The Sentence. I have Love Medicine. I have The Master's Butcher Singing Club. I've read Future Home of the Living God. I have La Rose. I want to read her newest one, The Mighty Red. I don't know what that's about. I have The Beat Queen. I have Tracks. I might have The Painted Drum. I have Four Souls. I think some of her books are nonfiction. I think some of them are children's books, like young adult. I think that's it. I've read or in the process of reading 2, and then I have at least seven other of her books that I have collected in recent years. So I definitely need to continue reading Louise Erdrich. I have not watched Mara from Books Like Woe's reader taste test, or whatever she calls those, where she reads a bunch of Louise Erdrich books. I know that she has done that, and I know that she really, really loves her work, and Louise Erdrich became a new favorite author of hers. So I would definitely check that out, and I will leave it linked below. The only reason that I haven't watched that video myself is because I know I want to read the books, and I don't really like to watch reviews of books that might have spoilers for books that I know I'm going to read, if that makes sense. Also, Brian from Bookish loves Louise Erdrich's work, so he has some videos. If he has some standalone book reviews or anything like that, I'll try to leave those down below as well. He was definitely a big influence in me picking up her work early on. I will try to finish this book, and then I will try to come back to you later today, and we can watch the spin together if I can read it in the next 2 to 3 hours. I only have like 3.5 hours left on the audiobook in regular time, and I am reading it at like 1.65, so hopefully I will be able to get through it. It is June 2nd, and I have finished reading The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. I did finish this about a week ago, but I did not finish it during Sarah's reading sprints, and I did not watch the prompt yet, so we're going to do that in a minute. But let me tell you about the end of The Sentence. So I did talk to you when I was like 2/3 of the way through, because I was saying that this is a pandemic novel, and this is about Minneapolis, and this has the murder of George Floyd. And when I talked to you and when those reading sprints were, it was Saturday, May 25th. It's crazy because that is the day that George Floyd was murdered, and that's the day that I read the part where George Floyd is murdered in this book. So it was really heartbreaking and really hard to read, and definitely made me tear up. I felt a lot of grief during this book. I felt a lot of memories surging up, both about the pandemic and about the murder and about the state of the world, and how I had a lot of hope for the state of the world after the pandemic, or like as the pandemic was winding down, because of things like the Black Lives Matter movement, and because of things like recognizing police brutality and murder. I had so much anger, I had so much hope, and then it didn't change. You know, things did not get better. Things have actually gotten worse since then. Here we are in 2025 with a way worse world, with a way worse society, with a way worse culture, more leeway for people to do bad things. So it definitely brought up a lot of memories. It's definitely a hard read for that respect. It's also a hard read to read about Tuki's life and the hardships that she's gone through, and the hope that she's had, and the anger that she's had to process. So it was a very visceral read, because you are doing those things along with Tuki for your own self and for your own predicament and for your own journey through life and through all the events that are talked about. It was not a particularly witchy, weird, over-the-top premise, because like many books written by Native American authors, the speculative elements in this are not speculative, they are true Native American culture. So you can't really call someone being haunted or spiritual presence being around a speculative element, because it's not speculative, it's true, which is something that I always struggle with in my like white Western mentality, to understand that just because I was raised to believe a certain thing, mostly by pop culture osmosis, mostly by just cultural norms where I grew up and in the society that I grew up in. Not because my family didn't believe in that, but because society at large tells you you're not supposed to believe in ghosts, you're not supposed to believe in that kind of spirituality, that's, kooky or strange or whatever. I was actually raised with people who were much more open and accepting and understanding, and definitely raised me to believe that those things could be true. But because our society is so oppressive about squashing beliefs like that, partly because they want to squash cultures of Black, Brown, Indigenous, Asian people because of monetary gains, because of capitalism, because of the patriarchy, you just grow up thinking that just that idea has to be a weird idea. But it is not a weird idea. It is a normal idea. And it is the truth. I really love this book. It definitely is a much quieter book, and a book much more about Tuki's life and her growth and her acceptance of things that have happened to her, just learning with her about her life and learning with her how to deal with the events that happened. But I really, really loved it. I thought this was absolutely great, and I'm super happy to have read it. And I could definitely see myself revisiting this one, although I would need some time to remove myself again from those feelings that I felt and that anger that was brought up surrounding the pandemic and the murder of George Floyd. And I felt very poignant that I was reading it on that day, because I would not maybe have recognized that it was that day. In my mind, the events of that year are so out of time and out of place. I would have thought that happened later in the summer, but it really happened very, very early on, before the summer season even started. So it was interesting to kind of try to remember some of those things and to memorialize those things through reading this book, which was really interesting. Now it is time to pick the TBR spin for June. So this spin choice has been up for about a week, but like I said, it's only June 2nd, so I feel like I'm still on track. This might be the first month in not only this year, but 6 months before this that I'm actually kind of on time. I don't know what I would like to read. I'd actually be down with a swap for this month and maybe changing up my stack a little. I'm not going to change up my stack before I see the prompt, but I could maybe think about changing something up when I see what the prompt is. My TBR spin stack still consists of Begin Again, James Baldwin's America and Its Urgent Lessons for Our Own by Eddie S. Cloud. This, I think, would be too relevant, too close to the sentence and some other things that I'm reading, but obviously this is a good one and I would like to read it. I have The Life of Aloda Aquino, which is a slave narrative. Again, I haven't read a slave narrative in a long time. I love to read these autobiographies because they are so relevant to what's going on today, and I was not taught anything about slavery really in school except that it existed and then it was gone, which isn't true exactly. So I always want to read these, but again, I feel maybe too heavy, too similar to the subject matter. In the same vein, I would say Cain by Jean Toomer, I have 2 copies of this one, is the same fictional account of time of slavery, time after slavery, so maybe too close to what I've been reading, too harsh. And similarly, Richard Wright's 8 Men, which is 8 short stories about different men, feels a little bit too much like what I've read and what I'm reading currently. So all of those in the stack, obviously good choices, but I don't know if I would really want to read them. And then I have How to Pronounce Knife by Savanka Thamaganza. This is a collection of short stories. I would be down for this because I haven't read a collection of short stories in a really long time, so maybe this is the one. I also have The Turquoise Ledge, a memoir by Leslie Marmon Silko. I would like to read this because I haven't read a memoir. Well, that's not true. I'm actually reading a memoir right now, but it's a pretty frivolous memoir, whereas this is probably a little bit more serious and interesting, so I would not mind reading this. Finally, I do have Love by Toni Morrison on my TBR spin list, but this is a stand-in for the next Toni Morrison I need to read. So I am currently reading Song of Solomon. That one wouldn't count, so it would be the next one, which I think is Tar Baby. I don't have Tar Baby, so I might read that one on audio. I know that Toni Morrison reads all of her own audiobooks, so that would be really fun to listen to her read. I love to read them physically. I love to read them with my own narration. June, but I think it would be fun to listen to Toni Morrison. But because I am in the middle of Song of Solomon, I don't think I would read that right away, so I don't know if that would be the pick either. So I'm kind of leaning towards these two, or maybe a swap to swap something out if that works for the prompt. So I pulled up Sarah's video, but my computer won't start. Hi, hello. This computer's so brutal. Okay, so I pulled up Sarah's video, close to the spin. Let's watch and see what the spin says is our pick for June.
Okay, I really want to swap this month. I think it's just because we've gotten so far in.
That's so funny, because Sarah just said she really wants a swap this month too, because we've got so far in and we haven't had a swap. I really want to swap too, so let's see what happens. The prompt for June is a book by an author you've never read from before, so I have read from Leslie Marmon Silko. I have not read from Richard Wright. I have not read from Samaganza. I have not read from Jean Toomer. I have not read from Elida Aquino. I have read from Eddie S. Glaude. What did I read? Did I read something by Eddie S. Glaude? I think I did. Wait, let me check. In the meantime, I have read from Toni Morrison, so that's good. Not a Toni Morrison. Did I read something by Eddie S. Glaude? Okay, no, I have not. I have a few of Eddie S. Glaude's books. I did start Begin Again a while ago, a long time ago, many years ago, and I only got, about a 10th of the way in. I'm not going to read this one just because I haven't read from him before, but I don't want to read it. I'm not going to read these. Kind of picking between these two because I have read a book recently that referenced Richard Wright a lot, so that would be interesting, but I think I'm gonna go with this one. I'm also behind on my translated work. Oh, this isn't translated. I thought it was. Well, anyway, I am going to pick How to Pronounce Knife by Sovayankam Tamaganza, a collection of short stories, and I believe this author is Laotian, which I've never read from a Laotian author before. Born in the Lao refugee camp in Nang Khan, Thailand, Samaganza was raised and educated in Toronto, where she's currently at work on her first novel. I wonder if she ever wrote that novel or not. So this is not a translated work. I wish that it was, because I am behind on that goal of mine, that yearly goal, but I'm excited to read this. It looks like there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 stories in here, so they're all probably pretty short. I've mentioned this before, but I've heard mixed things about this. I know Jen from Jem Campbell didn't like this one. I think Books and Lala might have read this and not liked it, but I'm excited to read it. That leaves our list. Those are going back on my TBR Spin shelf for next month, and in June we're going to read How to Pronounce Knife. So hopefully I can read this during the month, and I can stay with this caught up space that we're in for TBR Spin. That would be really exciting. Let me know if you picked your June book for TBR Spin. Let me know what you picked. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!